Welcome. Today we will be reading lesson 27 in the workbook and from the text, chapter 3, section 7, Creating versus the Self-Image. And now for lesson 27. Above all else, I want to see. Today's idea expresses something stronger than mere determination. It gives vision priority among your desires. You may feel hesitant about using the idea on the grounds that you are not sure you really mean it. This does not matter. The purpose of today's exercises is to bring the time when the idea will be wholly true a little nearer. There may be a great temptation to believe that some sort of sacrifice is being asked of you when you say you want to see above all else. If you become uneasy about the lack of reservation involved, add, vision has no cost to anyone. If fear of loss still persists, add further, it can only bless. The idea for today needs many repetitions for maximum benefit. It should be used at least every half hour and more if possible. You might try for every 15 or 20 minutes. It is recommended that you set a definite time interval for using the idea, when you wake or shortly afterwards, and attempt to adhere to it throughout the day. It will not be difficult to do this, even if you are engaged in conversation or otherwise occupied at the time. You can still repeat one short sentence to yourself without disturbing anything. The real question is, how often will you remember? How much do you want today's idea to be true? Answer one of these questions and you have answered the other. You will probably miss several applications, and perhaps quite a number. Do not be disturbed by this, but do try to keep on your schedule from then on. If only once during the day you feel that you were perfectly sincere while you were repeating today's idea, you can be sure that you have saved yourself many years of effort. To see with vision is to see without attack thoughts and without judgment, and ultimately without the past. It is to see through loving eyes. This lesson goes a step past being determined to see. Lesson 20. By giving vision importance above all other things, By granting the idea priority, the thought of sacrifice and loss may arise in the mind. One is given the corrective thought that vision has no cost to it in order to counter this fear thought, and also to point out that to see with love can only bless. One can only gain. In repeating today's idea frequently throughout the day, it is gently advised that one will probably forget, but not to be upset when this occurs, but to merely recommit oneself to the remembering. And the amount of importance one gives to the idea will determine one's remembering to repeat it. And now for our text reading for today from chapter 3, section 7, Creating versus the Self-Image. Every system of thought must have a starting point. It begins with either a making or a creating, a difference we have already discussed. Their resemblance lies in their power as foundations. Their difference lies in what rests upon them. Both are cornerstones for systems of belief by which one lives. It is a mistake to believe that a thought system based on lies is weak. Nothing made by a child of God is without power. It is essential to realize this, because otherwise you will be unable to escape from the prison you have made. You cannot resolve the authority problem by depreciating the power of the mind. To do so is to deceive yourself, and this will hurt you because you really understand the strength of the mind. You also realize that you cannot weaken it any more than you can weaken God. The devil is a frightening concept because he seems to be extremely powerful and extremely active. He is perceived as a force in combat with God, battling him for possession of his creations. The devil deceives by lies and builds kingdoms in which everything is in direct opposition to God. Yet he attracts men rather than repels them, and they are willing to sell him their souls in return for gifts of no real worth. This makes absolutely no sense. We have discussed the fall or separation before, but its meaning must be clearly understood. The separation is a system of thought real enough in time, though not in eternity. all beliefs are real to the believer. The fruit of only one tree was forbidden in the symbolic garden. But God could not have forbidden it, or it could not have been eaten. If God knows his children, and I assure you that he does, would he have put them in a position where their own destruction was possible? The forbidden tree was named the tree of knowledge. Yet God created knowledge and gave it freely to his creations. The symbolism here has been given many interpretations. But you may be sure that any interpretation that sees either God or his creations as capable of destroying their own purpose is in error. Eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge is a symbolic expression for usurping the ability for self-creating. This is the only sense in which God and his creations are not co-creators. The belief that they are is implicit in the self-concept, or the tendency of the self to make an image of itself. Images are perceived, not known. Knowledge cannot deceive, but perception can. You can perceive yourself as self-creating, but you cannot do more than believe it. You cannot make it true. And as I said before, when you finally perceive correctly, you can only be glad that you cannot. Until then, however, the belief you can is the foundation stone in your thought system, and all your defenses are used to attack ideas that might bring it to light. You still believe you are an image of your own making. Your mind is split with the Holy Spirit on this point, and there is no resolution while you believe the one thing that is literally inconceivable. That is why you cannot create and are filled with fear about what you make. The mind can make the belief in separation very real and very fearful, and this belief is the devil. It is powerful, active, destructive, and clearly in opposition to God, because it literally denies his fatherhood. Look at your life and see what the devil has made. But realize that this making will surely dissolve in the light of truth, because its foundation is a lie. Your creation by God is the only foundation that cannot be shaken, because the light is in it. Your starting point is truth, and you must return to your beginning. Much has been seen since then, but nothing has really happened. Yourself is still in peace, even though your mind is in conflict. You have not yet gone back far enough, and that is why you become so fearful. As you approach the beginning, you feel the fear of the destruction of your thought system upon you, as if it were the fear of death. There is no death, but there is a belief in death. The branch that bears no fruit will be cut off and will wither away. Be glad. The light will shine from the true foundation of life, and your own thought system will stand corrected. It cannot stand otherwise. You who fear salvation are choosing death. Life and death, light and darkness, knowledge and perception are irreconcilable. To believe that they can be reconciled is to believe that God and his Son cannot. Only the oneness of knowledge is free of conflict. Your kingdom is not of this world, because it was given you from beyond this world. Only in this world is the idea of an authority problem meaningful. The world is not left by death, but by truth. And truth can be known by all those for whom the kingdom was created, and for whom it waits. This section begins with reminding one of the power of the mind and one's tendency to underestimate it. The undoing of the authority problem, one's belief one can create oneself, depends on understanding the power of mind. One believes one has usurped the power of one's source by making a self-image of oneself. This making of a self-concept is the foundation of the ego's thought system, the system of separation, which is very destructive and fearful. Even though it is not true, by believing in separation thoughts, they become very real to oneself. And while believing in these thoughts, awakening to the truth of what one is very frightening. Even though none of these fearful thoughts have any real effects on one's true self, as long as one believes, one can make oneself into whatever one wants. One will reside in conflict, fear, and suffering.